purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person can deny.
Good afternoon and welcome to Freethought Forum. Freethought Forum is produced by Fahringer, and I am so happy that she asked me to be the host this afternoon because I get a chance to be with my good friend Terrellita Maverick. My name is Sally Chizek, and I welcome you, Terrellita. I'm so glad you could come.
Thank you.
Haven't seen you in a while.
I'm here.
Okay. There's been a resurgence of Islam lately. That's kind of all we hear since September the 11th. And so we're going to discuss some aspects of that and also of Christianity. So the first thing I had to do was to read the Quran in translation, of course. And I also read some other things translated. This is by N.J. Daywood, and it is very clear, so it's not hard to read. It's just that it's very repetitious, so that makes it a little bit hard. And also some of the things that we're going to be talking about are translations of the Quran by A. Yusuf Ali, devoted Muslims. So, you feel like you're getting, the truth from these translations. Not that translations are ever as good as the real thing. I find the Quran very repetitious, as I said before, and contradictory, just like the Bible. It seems to me, this is just my humble opinion, that they used the Bible as a guide. They mention it, they mention all the cast of characters, same thing. So I think they used it as a guide. And I do believe that Muhammad was very fond of Jesus Christ, although he thought he was a prophet, but never thought that he was a God or the Son of God. In fact, the translation was quite cute when he said something like, "Heaven forbid that God should have a son." So anyway, I find a few amusing things on it. But Terrellita, you know a lot about the Quran, so you tell us a little bit about it, please.
The Quran is universally accepted by Muslims to be the infallible word of God revealed by Muhammad, by the angel Gabriel to Muhammad. And that was 1,400 years ago, and the Quran still provides the rules of conduct, and they say structure, they like that structure, fundamental to the Arab way of life. The Quran was written so long ago that surely it can't cover all the aspects of life today. The Quran was revealed by Muhammad, and he was illiterate, but he had a lot of scribes who took down on little scraps of paper everything that he said. So it is said that it was actually put together in a book about 20 years after his death. And these sayings are called hadiths, and they were subsequently, the Mohammedans, Muslims will not admit this, there were new sayings invented to support these particular, not by him, but by someone else, to support these particular courses of action.
Somewhat like Bush issued an executive order so that he can get his way.
Exactly.
So, yes,
or something like that.
Don't you kind of worry that if things are in bits and pieces like the Quran would have been, that it would be maybe not, some would be lost, some would be changed, and so forth. So even though I think you had your guest, Nasrin, she says that, it was always the same, and which it is now. Once it was published, it will always be the same because
it hasn't. I'm told that that some few sayings have been added, but actually it's the same.
Yes.
And while the Bible has been changed, and as I said, and she said, "Oh no, not corrupted," but
I understand what you mean by corrupted.
And they have changed. They have changed Go ahead. I know you want to tell that Islam is oppressive.
Well, and of course, he was quite smart to have it in Arabic, and everybody that, a Muslim that is, they have to learn how to read in Arabic, so they always have some sort of continuity. Whereas the Bible has been translated into different languages,
100 different
and then, like you
languages.
said in your other program, King James came up with his version and so forth. So I certainly wouldn't put a lot of stock in that. I think that, according to what I have read, that Islam is a very oppressive religion, and of course, what I read in the Quran and the Hadith, then it is. It sounds to me oppressive.
You mean when you read it, you got that impression?
I got that impression. So I feel that it was undemocratic, and I don't mean our political democracy.
Yeah.
It was undemocratic, that it doesn't give everyone a fair shake, especially not women. Puritanical, very punitive, anti-religious, and it oppresses women. And
No,
that's,
anti-intellectual, I would say that.
yeah, it is anti-intellectual.
And oppresses
And
women.
Yes. Okay, let's cover some of these points. Was the oppression of women, was it always that way?
No, women had a higher status in Arabia before Islam. There are accounts of women fighting in battles, riding across the desert, visiting men alone, and taking part in public debates.
Well, I could believe that. A good example is Khadija. That would be Muhammad's first wife. She was,
She was
an heiress,
wonderful.
a businesswoman, and she proposed to him. And what they don't usually tell you is she was older than he was, which is very unusual for Arabic men to marry older women. You know, they usually marry young.
And
So-
several
Yeah,
wives.
right. So what else can you tell us?
Well, today, according to Judith Hayes,
Oh, she's a writer.
she's a writer, all Muslim women are captives if they live according to the Quran and Prophet Mohammed and the Prophet Muhammad. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. And also, another thing I read in this Quran was they consider women to be one half human. And I read that, it said one half human, but actually I wonder if they just mean that they're just not as worthy as men. Surely they don't mean they're half human and half something else, but
No.
that is what I read. Also, when their husbands die, you know, they don't just get the estate like, you know, most women do in other countries. They have to, the male heirs, they get a bigger share, and then she gets a lesser share. So, and if there's no offspring, male offsprings, then it goes on to his brother and so forth. So, what do you
Islam is very harsh on women, particularly in sexual manners. The Quran says, your wives are as tilth.
What is that?
Tilth means to plow.
Plow.
Yes, so approach your tilth when or how you will.
Oh, I get
it's
it.
sort of like
like plowing.
they are your tilth.
Oh, yeah. Oh. And of course, that would be for the wives, because they can have more than one, and also for their slaves and all. So in other words, he can have sex with his wife or anyone he owns, concubines or whatever, in any way that he wants and any time, but the woman doesn't have similar rights.
Oh no.
No.
If she were found to have an affair with another man, she would be killed, stoned. She would be stoned to death.
Right.
And honor killing still exists for women who have lost their virginity before marriage, even if they are raped. And I read about that happening just a few months ago.
Oh yeah, this is not just ancient history.
And I know when I was in I was there several months, so I dated a nice man whose name was Blowy, or was it Mohammed? And after about 3 weeks, I said, Mohammed, I hear you have a wife. And he says, I do not. I have 2 wives.
Oh,
So,
well, that made it all right.
well, that made it, that's okay.
Well, actually, that's not a whole lot different
Much
from
like
Christianity, right? In Deuteronomy 22, 20 to 21, it notes that if a woman is found to be not a virgin, then they shall bring the damsel to the door of her father's house, and the men of the city shall stone her with stones until she die. That's what it says. Not my English, it's what it says. And so, you know, why do they place all this value on virginity? But it'll be one-sided, only if a woman is not virgin.
Beats me.
Beats me too. Well,
more recently, Terrellita Maverick from Bangladesh
oh yes,
said at a human secular meeting that she went to that she outgrew her Muslim upbringing, and like some of us who were Christians, she began writing against misogyny or the hatred of women. She left the country, but is living under a death sentence.
yes, and certain. That wasn't so long ago. That happened in 1994, and they issued a fatwa against her, and I think they did against that Salman Rushdie also for writing satanical verses.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so that means that you have a death sentence, and the Bangladesh government also issued a warrant for her arrest for blasphemy. Okay.
I think she went back in September of 1998 to take care of her dying mother, and demonstrations and threats forced her into hiding. And after her mother's death, I hear she escaped to Sweden.
That's right, with some help from people from the West. So, they
Yeah.
care for her.
Yeah.
But all she did was just not want to be in that religion, but see, you don't have a choice. You know, when
Well-
she says she outgrew that religion, they wouldn't let her do that. It just, but isn't that like Christianity also? They can't stand to be criticized. I also heard of another case, a lady by the name of Homa Darabi, and I apologize for how I pronounce her name, but that's what it looks like to me. She was a child psychiatrist, and this was in Iran, and she was hounded for not observing the dress code. So she was forced to give up her practice, and also she was a professor at the University of Tehran, had to give that up, and in 1994, she went to the town square, poured gasoline on herself, and set herself on fire, just in protest.
I know how bad it is because after I went to Morocco, which was pretty nice, I actually hitched across North Africa.
Well, how you
Can
do
believe
all that,
it?
I don't know.
I went through Algeria. That is the worst country. And the meanest bunch of men. I was so ignorant, and I was a grown woman. I had my child with me, who was 17. I didn't know anything about these laws or Islam. I was just being a hippie, and I went to Algiers, and I was really treated. It was awful there.
Oh,
That's
I
the worst
imagine.
country to. I mean, there are other countries that you can, African countries that you can go into that are fine. They seem to have a little more. They're more liberal. But men get all the breaks. The Quran tells them that they may take one wife instead of another, marry innumerable wives in a lifetime. I think they have to limit it to 4 now.
Oh, poor things.
And when they want a divorce, they can just verbally ask for one. Now I don't know how old this book. Where did you read? You read that in the court?
That's, yeah. 4.20.
Do you think that's still that way, that all they have to do is ask for it? I heard that there's some kind of
It's still that way because just recently I read in the newspaper that they can now do it over the telephone.
hush.
Yeah, really.
Over the
Over the telephone.
Over
so,
the internet.
So it has,
Email, just
I
email.
doubt it.
I want
Well,
a
they
divorce.
didn't say anything about email, but they can just call them up on the phone and say, hey, I divorce you, or we're no longer together, we split the blanket, whatever. In the Quran, of course, it does describe men as being superior to women, because Allah made them so, to excel over women, and also because they support women. Of course, that's not always the case here, but
Well,
what
I
they
see
say.
a lot of women hanging on to the worst husbands because they're supported
Yeah.
by them. I know that.
yeah, that's true.
I know that's true.
But does that make them better? And they should lord it over you? I mean, aren't you equal anyway? Even if a woman stays home, she's doing a lot of work too. She's doing her share.
But then some of these men even are abusive, physically abusive, not only psychically, but physically abusive. And women feel that they must suffer this tragedy in order to, not just because they're being supported, but because that's part of the cross they bear, because Jesus died.
Because of your conditioning, that you have been conditioned since since you were a kid. The church does it for you too. Religion does that.
I know.
And I don't understand suffering. I don't understand why you have to suffer to prove anything.
To be, and now in the church, you have to suffer to be redeemed, for redemption.
Yeah, that doesn't
And that's
make
why all
sense.
these poor, that's part of the Christian Bible. You have to, it's all right to suffer because you will be redeemed in heaven. That's a bunch of bull.
Oh, tell me.
Anyway, did you know that the Prophet Muhammad had 13 wives and many concubines? Well, and his third wife was 10 years older than he at the time of...
Oh, excuse me.
What?
She was 10 years old.
What?
She was 10 years old. His third wife was 10 years old. How old was he, do you know?
53.
Well, would you
And
call that a pedophile?
Pedophile.
Yeah.
I hope all you Islam watching. You'll have to get your own program. I've suggested that you have come down here at public access. You know you can do that. First come, first serve. And there's so many Christian programs. It's 80% loaded with Christian programs.
Oh, I know that.
Do you know that?
Yes, yes.
I'd like to see, I wouldn't mind seeing a few good Arabs on here, Islam shows, to balance it out. Just
That's right, because it's mostly just
mostly
Christians, what I've
Christian
seen.
and
Terrellita, our number is going to be on the program. So
yeah. I hope that
yes, so
they will show. I know that some of you may disagree or agree, and if you agree, we want you to call our voicemail and say you agree. If you disagree, then don't get mad. Just tell us how. Just tell us how. And if you want to join us, we'll be happy to answer. Just repeat your phone number, and we will call you back and tell you where we meet. And you can be one of us, and we'd love to have you because...
Or just come and see what our meetings are about.
Just come, just check out our meetings.
Yeah, of course, like I said, this was all translated, and I've written down a lot of stuff that I read or that I think that's how I understand it, and somebody may disagree. Let them call us and let us know.
Of course.
They might be
Please
right.
call us because we'd be happy to.
But I did read that his wife was 10 years old. I'm not very, very surprised.
She
they
didn't
married
get
pretty
pregnant.
young.
Maybe. Until a couple of years later.
That it didn't say. Oh, okay.
So whoever said it's sure.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you about another man that I heard of. It was written in the Times of London, and this was, again, not ancient history. This was August of last year. His name is Dr. Eunice Shackle, medical lecturer. He was sentenced to death for blasphemy. And guess what he said?
What?
He said that Mohammed and his family were not Muslims before he got the revelation.
Before Muhammad?
Right. Of course, there was no Muslim before then. So that sounds right to me. But because of that, he was tried and sent to prison. This religion and the laws all tied together, and they condemn people for what they think. What would you suppose would happen if he got out of jail, Terrellita?
I don't know.
Well, you know what? It'd be the same thing as would happen with...
Well, Islam is a militant
yeah. Oh, it
religion.
is. Yeah.
And the right, I think it was some Right Reverend Bullen Dolly,
Oh, yeah.
I think his
I
name
have heard
was,
of
an
him,
Episcopal bishop in Sudan said the coercive instruments of the state are brutal force to ensure that no other religion but Islam is practiced. And now non-Muslims suffer, we're infidels by the way, suffer persecution in employment, and all women, whether Muslim or not, are forced to wear the black chador and veil. Oh, I've seen all those versions of it. There are about 30 different styles. Some of them, they've got that screen across their face.
Like they did in Afghanistan?
Yes.
And those were blue.
They're blue, yeah.
And
they
the
were
ones
kind of pretty.
Yeah, right. The ones in, which is my favorite color, the ones in Saudi Arabia are black.
Black, and and they've got funny masks, too.
Oh, yeah, you couldn't see the eyes
scary.
at all, right.
Oh, yeah. And slavery continues to be practiced by the Murahalin. Members of the government-backed militias regularly conduct raids against Christians in the southern Sudan. So the Murahalin have killed thousands enslaved children and young women, stolen cattle, plundered and burned food stores and crops. Of course.
God, they're bad. They're so bad.
I know it. And
I think that's the religious.
What is the biggest crop there? They say they're farmers. They're farmers of
poppies or
dope. Dope.
Yeah.
That's what how they. But we must understand.
Well, see, the Quran only talks about alcohol, and that's forbidden. But they don't say anything about drugs.
No.
So I guess it's all right for them to use drugs, but not alcohol.
But before we go on, I'd like to make the point that I think we're in Afghanistan not because it is, as Bush says, a religious war. Even though we are atheists, I still believe that it is not. It is called a religious war as an excuse to go through Afghanistan up to Turkmenistan, where all the oil is. We had to get the Afghanistan away from the Russians because we wanted ourselves.
Well, we wouldn't be in the Middle East at all if it weren't for oil. So I really believe that. Yeah.
Well, closer.
Well, do you know how the veil came around?
No.
Well, Mohammed is the one that prescribed it, and the thing is, it sounds like it's a trivial matter, but most of those countries are close to the equator. It's not trivial.
What?
The heat from wearing that veil and all. So that's. But that's how that came about.
Well, if you had to choose sides, what would you? Who was it that said that? If you had to choose sides, I'd stay.
It was a kid in Maryland. A reporter was asking him some questions. He was Muslim, going to a Muslim school, and he was an 8th grader. And they asked him. He said that he was a Muslim. If he had to choose sides, he would always remain a Muslim. He had no pride in being American, and that even when he talked to his cousins in Pakistan, he was ashamed to say that he was American. He wasn't proud of that.
I read that.
Yeah.
And the reporter was Mark Fisher, I believe, and he said it is different with militant Islam. which seeks to dominate the nation in which it grows, and when in control, diminishes the rights of all who disagree.
Yeah, so then you have places like Iran where you have, and Saudi Arabia, where you have only the one religion.
Yeah.
Well, and you have no other choice. So that religion is what they're going to always have. And everybody else is an infidel and probably will get killed. So if they come to the United States, become Americans, they're still really Muslim and want everyone else to be Muslim. And that's not, and they're
Sally,
gaining too.
Sally, you know, I interviewed
yes.
Nazli Siddiqui, and she's so smart. And she told me earlier that, and I thought there were 500 million Muslims in the world. There are 1 billion and growing, because they embrace everybody, because the Afro-American is welcomed and loved, because and they're becoming Muslims and leaving their church.
Yes.
And becoming.
Yes. Well, that's true. Yeah.
And becoming Muslims.
Right. Although, again, I can see the men wanting to be Muslims, but I just don't see what's in it for the women.
And they won't be singing in church,
Yeah.
like the Baptist church. The Muslim hell is similar to the Christian hell, I think.
Oh, it is.
But the
it's very similar. They're both bad. I think you burn and then you grow new skin so that you can burn again. You have to drink boiling water.
But heaven is different.
But heaven's different.
Heaven's different.
Yeah. But it's called paradise.
It's called paradise.
Yeah. And do you have information on that?
Oh, yeah. The Muslims' paradise must be for men, for men only. In Muslim heaven, men will be given a dark-eyed virgins who are perpetually young. And there is no mention of women being provided with virile young men.
Oh, well, then who wants to die and go to paradise?
So
if you're a woman.
The pleasures include sitting on thrones, walking through gardens, eating fruits and drinking. Then it's okay to drink wine, but it doesn't intoxicate you.
Okay, let me tell you what Ramon Lull said about it. He said something about that too. He said, I'm going to quote him, "What will their paradise be but a tavern of unwearied gorging and a brothel of perpetual turpitude?" So that's what he said.
I wonder where the women go.
They might go to paradise, but if they do, they go to serve the men.
Oh my God! Sure. All in
hey,
all,
you want some tea? You know.
The Muslim religion permitted stoning, murder, circumcision for men, and clitoridectomy for women, and dislike for art.
Yes.
If we had time, we'd go into more detail,
right? Because
Sally, but we don't.
We don't have that kind of time. I do want to kind of wrap it up to the road to religion is indeed very bloody. That's the title of our program. The early sect of Christians created a story about the crucifixion of their Savior God, Jesus, in which they took the blame off the Romans and put it on the Jews. Then to that bloody road came the Muslims, who invaded much of Europe and the Mediterranean and to Spain before being beaten back to the Middle East, where they occupied the Holy Land. And of course, all three religions now want to fight over that Holy Land.
And then the Crusades.
Yeah, the Crusades.
I saw the weapons of torture that were used at a museum.
Yes. That would make
when I was in
another
San
program.
Francisco.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Okay, so the Crusades were the Pope sending all these armies.
Popes, yeah.
And so then they fought back ferociously against the infidel Christians. And you know, Terrellita, it's been so much fun, but we're going to have to wind down here, and we didn't get to talk about all the things that we could have. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll be back.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei, no